Thanks, guys. Hello. When it comes to signs and synchronicity, it seems as if on the farthest ends of the spectrum, you have one side that falls under magic and mysticism, where God, the universe, source, divinely orchestrate exactly what you need to see, exactly when you need to see it. And on the other, we have reason and meaning making, and we would call this perspective maybe more logical. Well, when we think about the two hemispheres of our brain, one more feeling and perceiving, the other more logical and analytical, we could actually see how both are correct in terms of our biology. And then there is this space in the middle called the corpus callosum. It's a bundle of nerves and fibers that connects our two hemispheres, our two extremes, and allows them to communicate with one another. In 2013, an evolutionary anthropologist noted, after studying images of Albert Einstein's brain, that his genius could have been largely attributed to higher levels of internal connectivity in his brain. Basically, his corpus callosum was huge, and it meant his right and left side communicated very well. Now, this finding could also be a coincidence, right? No causal connection. It's luck, it's chance, it's happenstance, and I've come to really appreciate and value how Dr. Wayne Dyer broke down the etymology of the word coincidence. That within the word, we find coincide. Coincide being 2 points that fit together perfectly, intersect, and occupy the same space. Much like the corpus callosum functions in our brain, could an intersection between faith and logic form a coincidence? I had a pretty big coincidence myself a couple years ago. I was about a week out from finishing graduate school. I had a job lined up with therapists that I looked up to, admired, revered, and just secretly really wanted them to like me. All of the chips were starting to stack in my favor to feel like, hey kid, you checked all the boxes, you made it, sit back, relax. But instead, what I was doing was imagining myself in this new future, thinking, no one's gonna take you seriously. Who are you kidding? And I started to get very nervous and overwhelmed. And I should note that when I get nervous and overwhelmed, I have what I call shame glaze, which is basically stress sweat. It's also when I learned that my husband loved me unconditionally because I was pretty stinky. But it's during those times in my life where, honestly, I couldn't positively process, gratitude journal, affirm, vent, talk through how I was feeling on my own. So instead I turned to prayer. And my prayer, being driven and motivated by fear and doubt, I needed some reassurance. I needed some comfort. So I asked for a sign, and the sign I asked for was a hummingbird. Full disclosure, I love hummingbirds. I have about 6 feeders at my house, so I knew that asking for a sign to see a hummingbird and then rushing home and waiting by a feeder wasn't really gonna give me the relief that I was looking for. But the next day, I'm walking down this hallway and it has these huge picture windows, like floor-to-ceiling windows. It's the 3rd floor of a building downtown. And as I'm walking, this motion catches my peripheral vision, and I turn, and there's a hummingbird, hovers there for about 3 seconds and flies away. And I see this and I go, huh, okay. And I go on about my day, and it doesn't really change anything. The next morning, I'm starting my day the way I typically did at that time. I'm on my 3rd coffee and I'm anxiously making my bed and running through my to-do list, and the stress sweat is starting and I'm feeling behind. And my thoughts are interrupted with this knocking, this tapping on the outside of my 2nd-story bedroom window. I go over to my window and I notice a redbird was pecking at the window. It sees me, flies away, and behind where the redbird was another hummingbird. And this hummingbird held its position for 5 Mississippi seconds, like 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi. It was like the 2 birds like got together and like, listen, this girl ain't getting it, so why don't you do this and I'll do this and maybe she'll get it. I got it. And this shock ran through my body of relief, and it was my sign. Choosing to believe that something or someone heard me and then validated me, it was so comforting, and it made me a little braver stepping into this new phase of life. And isn't that really what we're looking for when we're asking for signs or when we're asking for help? Some confirmation that we're seen and heard. Dr. Maya Angelou has a saying about courage that courage is the most important of all virtue because without it, we can't practice any other virtue consistently. And when we're traveling to new destinations or moving through unknown territory, we need signs to help us get where we're going. And if we get lost, they help us get back on track. And isn't it interesting how we get more confident and familiar, we actually use the signs less? I can't name all the streets in my neighborhood. But in the face of uncertainty and scarcity, those signs, they make us a little braver to keep going. In The Gifts of Imperfection, one of my favorites, Dr. Brene Brown, notes that if we want to incorporate a new way of being, learn a new skill, apply a self-help guide to our lives, that it's equally as important that we understand the barriers and obstacles that can get in our way of doing this successfully or effectively, which leads me to technology and meaning making. Social media and technology have revolutionized the way that we consume goods, services, and information. I've actually been a part of conversations that sound something to the effect of, oh my God, you bought that in a store? That is so cute. Like, we may one day look at shopping in brick and mortar stores the way I think of going antiquing. And these services, while incredible, transformative, revolutionary, I mean, we are in a digital age. And then we think about Alexa and Echo, even artificial intelligence. We will soon, one day, no longer need to type what we're searching for. And it's important to note that a lot of these services are driven by convenience. When we think about it, we probably have supercomputers in our pockets right now, or at least on the table, right? And Google has, in some sense, eliminated the need for curiosity because the answers are right there. This can present some potential challenges when it comes to interpreting signs, such as affirmation versus information. The social circles that we interact with online largely consist of people we know, people we want to know, and people we already like. There is an inherent selection bias in the way that we choose to interact with people online. And over time, we begin to see the same stories, people, events, and we start to feel like we get a sense of certainty with a 100% degree and truth with a capital T. People that look like us, talk like us, and think the way we do. And this can affirm and narrow our view to seeing this is how people are, this is how I am, and this is where I fit. In an interview with David Letterman, President Obama noted that in a social experiment, someone took a conservative, moderate, and liberal person and had them Google search the word Egypt. At the top of the conservative person's search was the Muslim Brotherhood, the moderate was vacation destinations along the Nile, and the liberal was political protest. Whatever your biases are, that is what's coming to you. And here's another radical thought. When we think about advertising, algorithms, data mining, the internet is looking at us as much as we are looking at it. And if the lens through which we see the world comes from a computer, a tablet, or a cell phone, we must question what we see, or at least stay curious. Otherwise, we run the risk of becoming gridlocked in a polarized level of certainty. And then we add meaning making. Meaning making is our emotional mind's best attempt to fill in gaps of information based on how we feel. And if the way we feel is uncertain, scared, or afraid, that's going to inform what we see. The conclusions we draw, the assumptions we make, will be driven and motivated by a state of fear. Now, we have fear on the side of shame, self-doubt, self-criticism, fear on the side of needing to manage, predict, control, or manipulate future outcome. On one side could be or feel like depression, be or feel like anxiety. If I were to walk into a coffee shop and I just have my heart broken, I'm knee-deep in grief, I'm lonely, and I'm contacting everyone on my phone. I just want to contact someone, but no one's replying. I don't even get those 3 little wiggly lines or little dots. And I don't feel like I'm being seen, and I walk into this coffee shop and the person on the other side doesn't even look at me. Is this my sign? Because it feels like evidence. It feels familiar. Or if it's Friday and I've got the cutest new outfit and I go selfie, 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 selfie. This is my angle who's got a little filter here. Hashtag humble, hashtag Friday, hashtag blessed. I'm just gonna wait. I don't wanna be too anxious. That's okay, nobody's looked yet. It's fine. I'm just gonna give it a second. This is so weird. Like, why doesn't anyone see this? Because this person's online, this person's online, this person's online. Is this my sign? Because this feels like evidence that I suck and I'm stupid and everyone else has got it more figured out than I do. Our fear loves nothing more than to prove itself correct. Its favorite statement, its slogan is, see, I told you. I told you. It's the same way we feel when we're kind of peeling out of a 12-hour Netflix binge and we're scrolling on our phones, seeing shiny, beautiful people doing shiny, beautiful things, somehow always in fields of wheat. And, and we feel like we're covered in Cheeto dust and animal cracker crumbs. The scariest and most challenging part of all of this work, whether it's asking for signs, asking for help, or getting more curious about the world we live in, is that as we start asking questions, we might lose that certainty that righteousness, that sense of truth with a capital T. And uncertainty can feel unstable, which can feel unsafe, which can be terrifying. A couple years ago, I got a hummingbird. Well, actually, I got two. Yet in the face of each new presenting challenge, each new obstacle, I still wrestle with fear, self-doubt, stress, sweat, and hopefully finding the courage to question whether it's possible for me to try. This work it's incredibly vulnerable, but it's potentially the bravest thing we could ever do. Thank you.